Recently, I was hosting the New Zealand Biotech Awards. Sky City Convention Centre, 1,000 people, New Zealand's best and brightest, black tie, silver service. Got to say, I was starting to feel a little bit inadequate. And I turned to the waiter next to me and I go, hey dude, everyone in this room except for you and me has got a PhD. And the waiter turns to me and goes, got some bad news for you, bro. So I'm a very qualified gentleman, but oftentimes in my job I find myself to be the dumbest person in the room. In a very specific sense, with accountants and financiers in the room, I am proudly the dumbest person in the room. But if you constantly find yourself to be the smartest person in every room you're in, then I suggest that you get you into some different rooms. And that's the theme of my presentation today. Getting out of the rooms you're in, getting out of your comfort zone, getting better at getting better. To work out those change muscles and develop that reservoir of resilience. So you've got it not when you need it, but before you need it. And from what I've heard this afternoon, you're going to need it. So I've read 100 books on psychology, I've read 100 research papers, I've done my own research in writing my own books, including on volunteers. I was really interested to hear your comment earlier on, totally agree. And for the last 18 years, I've lived life not just beyond the comfort zone, but without the comfort zone. And I've made some mistakes and I've learned some lessons. I'm here today to throw a bunch of those at you. Not just for you, I'm sure many of you are living the optimal life already, but you might have other people that you'd like to influence in their changes that they face. So 3 primary things that I'll be focusing on. Why on earth would you want to do 2 dangerous things a year? Why don't most people do that? Or even why don't most people step out of their comfort zone at all? And then thirdly, perhaps most importantly of all, how? How can you get over those obstacles and barriers? How can you make a start? How can you build momentum? How can you keep going when the going gets tough? And how can you look around and help those you care about that maybe need a bit of a nudge? Now, who am I? Who am I to tell you to do 2 dangerous things a year? I'm no one special, I'm just like all of you. I'm no adventurer like Indiana Jones, who, as we know, is only afraid of one thing, which is Valentine. That's not good, that's a more raucous response. And I'm no bone-breaking, daredevil like Evel Knievel, who has broken more bones than he has smashed records, and he's smashed a lot of records. And I'm no life-risking challenge smasher like Felix Baumgartner, who built a space pod, attached it to a very special balloon, got into the space pod, went up into space, opened the door, and stepped out. From space. I have done none of those things, I am none of those people. But what I have done every year since the year 2000 is 2 dangerous things a year. Dangerous by my own definition of dangerous. Some have been dangerous, literally, by the dictionary's definition of dangerous. I have jumped out of things and driven things and so forth. But the ones that have really made a difference in my life, personally and professionally, haven't been the adrenaline junkie ones that I've done, but they were very cool. They were the comfort zone stretching, reputation risking, nerve-wracking experiences that have forced me to grow. And just like Carol, you're square within the square before getting out of that. So those are some mechanisms for doing that practically as you go through. And for me, it started out back in 2000, had a couple of kids, 2 and 4. That was the ages, not their names. If you ever find someone who's got 2 kids named 2 and 4, do ask them what happened to 1 and 3. Young, who's got kids? Who's ever been a kid? Who's waiting on DNA test results? Include everybody in this. So you know what they're like at that age. Every day is new and exciting. Oh, the sky's blue again. That's amazing. And I was in a very, very good job. I'll be honest. It was fine. Paid fine. It was just fine. Prospects similarly fine. And I just wanted some of that back. I wanted some childlikeness, not childishness. I wanted some childlikeness back. And what I figured that particular New Year's, instead of a resolution, I'd set in train the same resolution every year. Every year, 2 new dangerous things. And that first year was snow skiing and stand-up comedy. It's snow skiing, too expensive, don't really like it. But stand-up, there's a club in Auckland, a classic in Queen Street there. Every Monday they have what they call Raw Monday. Everyone can get 6 minutes of stage time. It's a cheap ticket. The audience knows what they're getting. It can be a marvellous discovery of talent or a horrific train wreck you just can't stop watching. And I did my first gig and I killed. Killing is good. Second and third gigs, died on my ass. Dying was bad. Fourth gig, back on the horse and kept on trucking. And I've got some rules around my dangerous things. I don't reveal this year's dangerous thing or the 3 previous years. Some are very personal, involving other people. I'll tell that story when the time comes. But the one I want to focus on today is the comedy side of things. This is me in Wellington, the entrance foyer at Te Papa, hosting the New Zealand Concrete Awards. Jealous? This is no joke. The awards themselves each weigh 7 kilograms. Here's a bit more hard rock and roll lifestyle gigs that open mic in Ponsonby. I know this is my face and that's as good as it gets, but it's a pretty cool photograph, right? Pretty Henry Rollins, pretty rock and roll. And there happened to be a professional photographer in the audience. And he was a New Zealander based in Osaka. And me and Raybon had a wee chat with him afterwards, and now I have a gig lined up and a place to stay in Osaka. And I'll meet other interesting people in my adventures along the way. Similarly, got a gig in Singapore the same way. And from there, predicting or revealing one of my next coming up dangerous things is doing a gig in Karachi, in Pakistan. So again, these things are all open and available to me because of the risks I'm taking through doing dangerous things. But most of my gigs are run-of-the-mill, meat and potatoes, nice safe audience. Like I suspect the staring I'm doing here might indicate some of the audience isn't particularly safe at this stage. But I travel the country, I have adventures, I meet people like yourselves, and I find that there's difference in geography. Like if we're doing a gig here in the city, you say something like, is anyone in tonight from West Auckland? And all the Westies go, hey! Because that's what Westies do. Then I'll say, is there anyone in tonight from the North Shore? And one lady back goes, be quiet, Gerald, the Westies will steal our car. I was in Christchurch a couple of weeks ago. I did a fundraiser, actually. Comedy fundraisers are great. Look us up. And I was in Christchurch. I'm walking about this far away as you are from me now. And I was 2 minutes into it, right in the middle of a joke. And she just stands up right in the middle, front row centre. And she goes, oh, you're not from Auckland. It's so violent up there. There's no community spirit. Don't even know your neighbours. I said, hey, look, madam, I take issue with that. I refute your statement. My children and I, we met all our neighbours up in Auckland last weekend at a little gathering that we in Auckland might call a armed offenders caucus, which was a joke. So let's look at some of these benefits. So, when you are doing dangerous things, it heightens your senses. You are more alert to opportunities as fundraisers or risks as business people. If you do dangerous things, it becomes habitual and you start doing these things earlier rather than waiting. And the earlier you implement a change, the less effort and drama is required. And thirdly, you start to develop another habit, what I call mistake learning systems. And I'll give you an example of one of those. Again, the more mistakes you make, the quicker you make, the smaller they are, the stronger the learning foundation from which to stop making mistakes. I used to work for Lotto in the mid-90s, and I was a trainer based in Auckland. I'd fly down to Wellington to run a week-long franchise management program. And this is in the days of Ansett and Golden Wings, and they had business class on planes domestically. And I was such a frequent flyer that I got to sit just behind business class, where I could observe them and their 3 orange juices or whatever else was going on. So it was a 6 a.m. red-eye flight Monday morning, and I'm blobbed out in my not quite business class seat, And I could see this dude who looked like Van West, Outrageous Fortune, sitting clearly not supposed to be in business class. I was just waiting for him to kick his butt back to cattle class with us. And no, he got his orange juice, and he stayed up there. So I got off the plane, he got off the plane, I got my bag, he got his bag, he got in a cab, I got in a cab, and we both ended up at Lottery's headquarters. And he had won First Division, $330,000. So I figured it out, shook him by the hand, come and meet Hillary, and who was the lotto girl in the 90s? I sort of realised who remembers Hillary Timmons? And we met her, shook hands, we give you a little book, advice to do with your winnings and stuff like that. Fared him well, went back to run my course. Didn't think about it again. 8 weeks later, I'm walking in to do some in-store coaching at a big lotto outlet I won't name. 3 terminals out the front. Who should I see front and centre but Van West, working a terminal? I think, oh my God, he's invested his winnings, bought part share in a supermarket, and he's working with the troops because he's still a man of the people. Cool story, right? That did not happen. He had blown all his winnings and was back to scratch. And I took him out for coffee. I need to hear your story, man. What was the deal? You got like a garage full of Harleys, you've got something to show Gary? Nope. And he told me 23 years ago something that has stuck with me ever since. He said, Terry, when I won Lotto, I was 30 years old with $30 to my name. The next morning, I was 30 years old with $330,030 to my name. And that was all that changed. All the beliefs and the habits and the things that I did that got me to $30 at 30, they just kept on going. And within 8 months, I'd lost it all with nothing and no one to show for it. So there is a danger in avoiding risk. There is a danger in sameness, that doing dangerous things forces you to see things differently, to notice the risks, to try new things, to notice threats. Law of physics. Newton's law of physics, a body in motion tends to stay in motion unless affected by an outside force. I think there's a thing called behavioural physics, that people are much the same. That most of us, the people you care about, even yourselves, will keep going in a certain direction. Unless something like a legislation change, or an earthquake, or a job loss, or a heart attack, or a marriage breakup, something externally affects us. And then we'll change. It's a bit like the movie Armageddon with Bruce Willis. Spoilers coming up. If they just nudge the asteroid early on, it doesn't take much effort. Just a little bit of a degree, and it'll miss the Earth entirely. All the drama is avoided. Because they waited to the very last minute, they had to nuke it, and Bruce didn't make it. It's the same with your own behavioural decisions. By getting into the habit of getting used to doing risky things. I'm not talking about something small every day that scares you. I'm talking about 2 dangerous things a year that might have consequences. A couple of quotes down, of course, it's not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives, it is the one that is most adaptable to change. I say make it deliberate. Don't wait to respond to changes. Be in charge of those by initiating them yourselves. And it's easy for you to nod and logically agree with what I think is a logical idea, but we're fighting human nature to a degree. Now, the Kaikoura earthquake hit in November 2016. I was in Wellington at the time. Wellington was also affected, and in fact, they had floods the same day. You could not get out of Wellington by air, road, rail, or sea. They should probably do something about that. And I was blobbed out on the couch. My troubles were few. I was watching daytime TV on the screen. It was Ella, dance, joke, fries. Pretty cool show. Never get to see it normally. And she had a chef on the show, and the chef was making meatloaf. And the chef did the typical sort of pan the tray shot to camera. Ellen came along and said, "Hey chef, I notice you've cut the end off the main part of the meatloaf and put it to the side in the tray. What's your logic for doing that?" And chef looks all flustered and embarrassed and goes, "Oh geez, Ellen, I learned to make meatloaf as a young girl at my mother's knee, and she used to do that, and I've just really carried it on. I don't know why. Even now, as a grown-up professional chef, I cannot think of a single logical reason for doing it. It might even make the meatloaf worse. I'm so embarrassed, Ellen, I'm so sorry." Ellen goes, "That's okay, we'll bring your mum. What's her name?" They bring up mum and goes, "I was watching on TV, I don't know, my mum used to do it." They go back 4 generations. great granny is still trucking on, and she goes, I was making meatloaf during the Great Depression, had a very large family, but we were very poor, so we could only afford a very small tray. So to make it fit, we could cut the egg off and put it to the side. So there was a perfectly logical reason back in the day, and we have a wee laugh. But isn't that human nature in a nutshell? And you'll hear it in organisations, not yours I'm sure, but other organisations that other people you know might work in, where you hear phrases like, the way things are done around here is the way things are done around here, or just bloody do it, all right? And those are indicators of change-averse organisations. And the fact is, change is rattling on whether you want it or not. Best to be in charge of it rather than be hit between the eyes with it. The most dangerous phrase in the language is "I've always done it this way." Now, I will often go into an organisation working as a trainer, and I'll set up early, and I'll be at a bit of a loose end, and the boss will see me. The boss will come along and go, hey, Terry, come along and meet the I see there's the new digger and here's the new computer. So meet the team, Terry. Very proud of the team around here. Around here, we learn from our mistakes. And I'll turn to that boss and I'll say, hey man, that's really interesting. Tell me, how do you do that? How do you learn from your mistakes? Because I'm writing a book on it. At that point, the conversation takes a bit of a dive. Because they don't know, it's just something that people say. But wouldn't it be good if you did, if you could? Start to develop mistake learning systems at an individual level, a team level, or an organisational level. So a quick one I'll just throw at you now that comes out of doing 2 dangerous things a year, all the other things that I've done. It puts 2 ideas that exist together to create this mistake learning system. One is called the experiential learning system. It's the basic way that people learn. As a trainer by trade, I've got dozens of techniques. This is my favourite. It's my desert island training technique. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone walked into this room today. I don't want to isolate anybody out who didn't. But I'm pretty sure I saw you after lunch walking into the room. I'm guessing none of you went to Walking University or studied Walking 101 at night school. Yet magically, without being formally trained to walk, all of you managed to learn to walk. And you did so via the experiential learning system. Let's picture a clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, you have the experience, you succeed or you fail, you then have a debrief point. You have a wee think about what went wrong. You then take some learning from that, you then apply that learning, adjust your strategy, rinse and repeat, and you get better. Learning to walk. So 8 months old on average, you're in your nappy bum, you're sitting on the couch, on the floor of the lounge, you're seeing other people around you, getting all the benefits of walking, they're getting the cookies off the bench, you want those cookies, you have a bit of a stand, bit of a wobble, bit of a fall, bit of a cry, bit of a pat on the head, bit of encouragement, up you get, stagger, grab the couch for support, grab the cat for support, and you get those cookies. And that's the experiential learning cycle. Now what I want to add to that is at the debrief point, the 3 o'clock point on the clock. And it's easy for me to say, have a wee think about what went wrong. It's useful to have a structure that becomes a habit. And the structure is called stop, start, continue. And it's 3 simple questions. You can literally have a big group like this and do it, or you can do it with the voices in your head as you drive into your next appointment. So say you're a fundraiser and you're going out to try and pitch a donor and they don't sign. So that's the experience, it was a fail. So you have a wee debrief and you ask yourself 3 questions. First question is the stop question. Next time I do that, what's one thing I will stop doing? Not 37 things, because that's very demoralising, and most of those will be rats and mice, but one thing, the main thing. Second question is the flip side of that, the start question. What's one thing next time I will stop doing? And again, you don't know what you don't know, so maybe you need to phone a friend, get a mentor, research somebody, Google something. Again, it just provokes you to keep trying new things. So what will I stop doing? What will I start doing? The third one, always finish with a bit of a pat on the back. Personal reinforcement. What's one thing I will continue to do, even though it wasn't a success? So in a small, incremental, habitual way, 21-day challenge for each of you here today is try and put into practice every day a stop, start, continue. Something that might work. It doesn't have to be a big deal with pens and papers and Excel spreadsheets. A little conversation with voices in the head lasts 30 to 60 seconds. Give it a crack, see how it goes. So, if there are these benefits of developing the state learning systems and noticing opportunities and threats more vividly by breaking this life of sameness, why isn't everybody doing it? Well, people have different levels of tolerance to risk, and I'll talk about that shortly. But here's a pretty typical gas station forecourt. One of my clients is the Automobile Association. They've done some research I'm about to reveal to you. You've borrowed a car, you've rented a car, you've bought yourself a brand new car, and you're pulling into the service station for the first time to fill it up. And just as you drive in, and just as you look at your options, what are you thinking at that point? Which side is the fling on? Here is a fact that 82% of adult New Zealand drivers do not know. None. There is a little arrow on your dash next to the petrol pump indicator that indicates the side. Now, as some noises being made in the room, it indicates probably 18% of you are sweet with this. So no one has to raise their hand. But I did this with some people who are pretty mechanically minded, and they did not know that either. And how often do we drive? How often have we stared and made intimate consensual eye contact with our dashboards? Hundreds, if not thousands of times. And because of the sameness, we fail to see it. And this isn't just a joke about a dash indicator. This is our lives, unless we take deliberate, proactive action and do dangerous things. Now, some of you may know what the reticular activating system of the mind is. Without revealing it, can you raise your hand if you do? Okay, that's about the average number of people who do. Everyone else, when I give you an example of it, you will all go, oh yeah, I know what that is. I've known about it since I was a child. In fact, it's happened to me twice today. And now you're going to learn what it's called. What's your name now? Hi Jocelyn. Jocelyn, do you notice the new 2019 Holden Commodore? It's that fluorescent lime green colour. And she hadn't noticed it, but for the next 2 weeks, everywhere she goes, she sees nothing but lime green cars. Are we all familiar with that experience? That is the reticular activating system of your mind in action. It's like a bouncer between your conscious and subconscious mind, letting some stuff in and most stuff not in. Conscious mind, maybe 5 to 9 things it can focus on at once, depending on complexity. Subconscious mind, tens of thousands whilst you sleep. Can't let everything in, we'd go crazy. But upon what does it base its decisions? Random if we don't take control of it. Lime green cars, shiny things over there, whatever Trump said last night. We don't want that stuff. We want our goals, our fundraising goals, the needs of our clients, our own personal development opportunities. We want that stuff. When I was working for Lotto in the mid-90s, taking those winners in, we had these little informal conversations. We'll call it research, but not really. And we were stunned. It became a question we would ask. The weird number of people, what's the first thing you're going to do when you win Lotto? And there's paying off the mortgage and quitting their job, and telling their boss, all those sorts of things, all our Lotto fantasies. But right up in the top 5 was get my ceilings clean. Seems kind of odd. But if you win Lotto, where's your body position? Where are you looking? You're looking up, and you're noticing things you haven't noticed before, like the cobwebs in the corner of your ceiling. If I got each of you, act like a depressed person right now, you'll drop your shoulders and step, and you can actually affect your body chemistry doing that kind of stuff. But the point being, by doing 2 new, dangerous things, you see new things. You get different points of view. You meet new people. It stimulates your reticular activating system. But again, you can make your dangerous things purposeful, as mine was with comedy, to meet people, to entertain people, to connect with people. That's helped me immeasurably in my non-comedy business. Comedy is a hobby. It was never meant to be anything other than that. But I make a third of my income now from comedy or comedy-related activities. It's a nice little earner, and it's fun, and I do it anyway. So there's definite benefits to doing dangerous things. Can I ask everyone please stand up? I'll be yakking for ages. Stand up and stretch, make sure you're all awake. And please pair up with the person next to you. If you've got freezies, that's okay. Try to part. If you are right-handed, raise your right hand. If you're left-handed, raise your left hand. Click your fingers 5 times. Lower your hands. Imagine for a moment your dominant index finger, your pointy finger, is a magic marker. And in a few moments' time, when I say go, you're going to pretend to write on your own forehead. whilst you are doing this, your buddy will be watching you. You will do what I say 3 times so they can clearly observe what you're doing. So if you're in a team of 3, just make sure you're only watching one person. What you will be writing on your own forehead with your imaginary magic marker is the capital letter E. Please do that and observe your partner 3 times now. Capital letter E, and when they finish, you do it. When they finish, you do it back. When both are finished, please retake your seats. Okay, team, grab a seat, grab a seat, grab a seat. Round of applause for our first winner of the day. Front row, what's your name there? Lily, for being the most animated animator. Please, round of applause for our first winner. So, actual again, this might mean nothing, but some research has indicated that we tend to default to one of 2 particular types. And those who are self-oriented and those who are other-oriented. If I was to take a stab, you're in the fundraising industry, I would imagine that's quite other-oriented. But you're accountants, so who knows? Without judging, just tell the other party what you observed them doing. Just take 30 seconds to do that now, please. Okay, team, pause right here, please. This is definitely a conversation. This is definitely a conversation to be carried on into drinkies afterwards. There are drinkies up, so definitely carry these conversations on. There's nothing right nor wrong, neither good nor bad, about whichever one you might be, however accurate that totally accurate party trick was. But you will probably have one orientation or the other. And those of you who are inwards oriented, you're more likely to miss outside opportunities and threats. So by getting yourself out there, doing those dangerous things, you can offset that to a degree. Now has anyone visited Coromandel? There's an attraction there called, there's more than that. Within Coromandel, there's an attraction called Waterworks. Has anyone been to Waterworks? Okay. Is it awesome? It's amazing, isn't it? So all of it with kids, there's none of that, are we there yet? Can we go home now? There's none of that. When my kids were little, took them there, maybe either side of 10, it was just fun. It's clearly designed by an engineer, water engineer. His last day at council, he stole a bunch of pipes and he set up this amazing, interactive, educational, fun theme park with beehives and botanic gardens for the parents and a cafeteria. But there's all this sort of interactive learn without realising you learn. You go around the corner on the gravel road, giant robotic spider on the cliff opposite the entranceway, robotic water-powered clown welcoming you in, cannon fight, and we'd finished it all, and right at the end was this picturesque water hole, swimming hole, tire swing, the big tree branch, like we all pretend to imagine we had in our own childhoods. And they were loving it, and I was trying to find a sunny spot to lay out the towels. I got lost in a hedge maze, came out the other side of the hedge maze. At the end of a gravel path, in the middle of the clearing, was this panel. 3 levers. Pull this one, don't pull this one. Suspended in the air above, maybe 15 metres above the ground, was a skeletal blue whale constructed out of thin copper piping. And just by itself, it looked amazing. All the wires, it just like was floating there, like science fiction. And so I pulled lever number 1, and gurgle from the bushes. You feel the water going into the system. And the whale started to sort of emulate movement in the ocean. It was just amazing, so artistic. So pull lever number 2, gurgle from the bushes. Little water spout coming out of the blowhole. That's so simple. Pull lever number 3, 8 tons of water falls on my head. Laugh, that soul purifying laugh. You haven't laughed since you were 3 years old. No one else is around. I don't care if they were. I wouldn't care anyway. So I grab all the stuff and I dump it in the sunny spot and I sort of wait to dry out. And I think it's some bit of a social psychology while we're here. So I grab out the still dry notebook and pen that I carry everywhere with me. Okay, Terry, I'm going to watch the next 100 people who come through who have not seen the previous people, so they don't or shouldn't know what's coming. And let's see how many pull lever 3. So 30-second conversation at your table groups. What percentage of people do you believe pull lever 3? Talk it up, please. Okay, James, pause it up here, please. What's your idea? Your numbers? Your thoughts?
About 25. 25?
25, interesting. That's fact. 100%. 100?
60.
60? That's the worst auction ever. Actual answer, 19%. 19. Now I thought to myself, you're the most cynical audience I've ever had. No one's ever gone below 80 before. 19, so maybe you're the most realistic audience I've ever had. Not 91, 9. And I was thinking to myself, this is a children's fun park destination tourism stopover. This is not a Scooby-Doo cartoon. What do you imagine will happen when you pull lever 3, a buzzsaw on a lever and flying through? At one point I saw a mum maybe stop a 4-year-old going for it. She goes, so I'm not here to interfere in anyone's parenting. This is the society we're living in. When I'm preaching dangerous things, now we've got a much more risk management, health and safety, and that's totally valid. But the pendulum's maybe swung a bit. So we've got our kids now swaddled in marshmallows and cotton balls. Typical council playgrounds, British Safety Standard 1704, no vertical drops greater than 800 millimetres without handrail, and spongy substance underneath, unlike the playgrounds from my youth. I can assure you, no children were harmed in the photocopy. Can I ask everyone, please, just where you are, fold your arms, please. Fold your arms, fold your arms. And don't move them until I ask you to, please. Please observe where they are. Which one's left, which one's right, which one's top, which one's bottom, what curve's under which. In a few moments' time, not before, in a few moments' time, I'm going to ask you to overtly unfold them, give them a wiggle, drop them, give them a wiggle, and then refold them the opposite way around. Please do that now. Open, wiggle, drop, wiggle, refold, opposite. I can perhaps most fairly describe that as varying degrees of success. That, in a nutshell, is part of the problem with behaviour change. If we never do dangerous things, the way you've always folded your arms, I was reading a research paper 2 weeks ago, the average person between 2 and 40 will do it 250,000 times. Every time you do a behaviour, right or wrong, good or bad, there is an electrochemical charge between dendrites or brain cells in your brain that create a connection called a synapse. The more often you do something, the stronger that synapse is. That folding your arms the way you've always done it is like a 10-lane motorway in your brain. It's wide, it's flat, and it's straight, and it's smooth, and it gets you where you're going effortlessly without thinking about it automatically. It's neat. Folding your arms the other way, even though logically and mechanically you think it would be exactly the same, it's not a 10-lane motorway in your brain. It's a gorse-covered bush track you're having to hack at with a machete. And not only is it a gorse-covered bush track you're having to hack at with a machete, it's a gorse-covered bush track right next to a 10-lane motorway. And that image in a nutshell is why people don't change and why deliberately doing dangerous things twice a year under your rules can break those patterns. And it's really hard to break those patterns without deliberate effort. So I've got a tool that I use called Danger DNA. We haven't got time to cover it today. I will send you copies. I'll include that in the handout that will be downloadable. But there is a survey. I've got 2 more things to cover and then I'll let you loose. I'll throw you back to Sean. There's a self-assessment tool. There is a sensation-seeking scale, which can reveal to yourselves, if you don't know already, how up for a challenge you are, how thrill-seeking you are. And thrill-seeking is the top one, if you like. The top's maybe the wrong word. Most extreme one, if you like. Experience seeker. I can't remember the third one, and there's boredom tolerant or something, whatever that one is. So without giving you the full battery of tests, which I'll email to you, terry@terrywilliams.info, just I'll send you an email with that in it. We'll do one question right now. So it's, you've got a day trip for work, you've arrived 5 o'clock the night before. Strange town, you've never been there before and you don't know anybody there. You're completely prepared for work, there's no need to do any homework. You're effectively at a loose end for an evening in a strange town where you don't know anybody. 30-second chat at your table, in your peers. What do you do that night? Talk it up, away you go. Okay, no one has to reveal anything, but I mentioned it would range from get in the dressing gown, order some room service and see when the reruns are on TV. No one raised their hands, through to actually go see a movie, maybe hit the local bar, or just go meet some strange people with motorcycles. Just see where it takes you. So for me, in my own personal life, quite apart from the income I've generated and the business that has been helped by doing dangerous things, it's helped me fulfill a lifelong childhood dream to become a published author. My comedy connections literally got me there. My first ever book, still my best-selling book, The Guide, How to Kiss, Get a Job and Other Stuff You Need to Know, was a bunch of life skills for young people told in the comedy style. And it was the comedy that got me the gig. And if you think being an author in New Zealand is an ego trip and we're all full of ourselves, let me assure you, I saw one of my books on Trade Me over the weekend where they referred to my autograph as slight damage. I want to finish on this. When my son was 14, he played an East Coast based cricket team. They made the grand final that year. They were against their mortal enemies, their nemesis team, a team they played twice in the regular season, lost narrowly and won narrowly. And so this was like a Disney storybook ending, chance for redemption. My son's team batted first, did pretty well. The opposition batted next, also doing pretty well. There are 2 balls remaining. The opposition team need 6 runs to win. 2 balls remaining, 6 runs to win. One of my son's bowlers comes in, bowls the ball, batsman plays it square of the wicket, just around the corner. When my son is fielding, he picks it up, and then from an angle, in cricket, it's side on, man, so you can't see 3 stumps, you can see 1 stump. And he picks up, without hesitation, hurls it at the stump, chance to win the game, misses it by a metre, misses the keeper by a metre, and goes all the way to the other boundary for 4 overthrows. Batsman had not moved a metre. Retires to his crease. So, score update, 1 ball remains, 2 runs, and the opposition wins. Now my son's coach was the square leg umpire, which is right there. He's literally right there. And he sees this as a teachable moment. So in what I can only assume was a loving and nurturing way, he suggested to Josh that perhaps if that same circumstance arose again, the sensible thing to do is not take the dangerous option, but to let them get the 1 and run it in and take the bails off with your hands. And that's this. Okay, coach? Okay, Josh? Okay, coach. So, 1 ball remains, 2 runs to win. The same bowler bowls the same ball to the same batsman, plays the same shot to Josh, and picks it up, and without hesitation, throws the ball in the stumps, smashing him out of the ground. And I remember it vividly as he's carried off on the shoulders of his teammates, with his coach in the background going, Jesus. So my heartfelt plea to all of you, whether literally or metaphorically, is to throw the ball and pull lever 3. Find your 2 dangerous themes, break those patterns of sameness. So I'm going to ask each of you to shout out in a few moments' time the phrase, pull lever 3. It's energy that makes me think you deserve to be meant-free Patrice. So we'll have a practice and then a proper one. 1, 2, 3.
Pull lever 3.
B plus practice. Let's go for the full 9 yards. 1, 2, 3.
Pull lever 3.
Okay, by my Jerry Williams, thank you very much.